Yay.
Hey, and we've got Diana Rodgers with us today, the lovely Diana Rodgers. So welcome to another NTA Facebook Live event. I was telling Diana, I'm gonna try to stay. I've got this sunbeam right here that's gonna melt me if I get into it, but so I'm gonna steer clear of that. So if you don't know, Diana Rodgers is a real food nutritionist who lives on a working organic farm, this is my favorite kind of nutritionist that does the full circle food. Organic farm near Boston, Massachusetts, and runs a vegetable and meat CSA with her husband, right?
He's really the runner. I'm just like the secret, at breakfast, I just sort of have you ever thought about growing mushrooms? Have you ever thought,
Yeah. You're the inspiration.
Yeah.
You're the ear whisperer.
Yeah.
So Diana has authored 2 best-selling cookbooks. And what I was thinking, okay, there's a really awesome one that I know, the Homegrown Paleo. I think that's it, right? And then what's the other one?
The other one is called Paleo Lunches and Breakfasts on the Go.
Oh, ooh, that sounds really great. I'm going to have to check that one out because that is something that I feel like I struggle with all the time.
Yeah.
My 10-year-old. Diana also runs a clinical nutrition practice. She also writes and speaks about the intersection of optimal human nutrition, environmental sustainability, animal welfare, and social justice. Did I freeze?
You froze, but you froze a little bit earlier too. I don't know.
Okay, my internet might be a little funny here. I hope. Did I unfreeze?
Not yet.
Okay. Well, I'm going to keep talking and you can look at me pretending like I'm saying a word.
Okay.
I'm just going to keep going. So anyway, Diana is the producer of a podcast called The Sustainable Dish. She interviews experts in the environmental and health movement. And as if that weren't enough, she is working on a documentary film project which examines the environmental and nutritional and ethical case for better meat. Diana's going to be speaking at our annual NTA conference called Roots that is happening from March 1st through March 3rd, and there I am back. And that's not very much time from now. My internet, weird. Not very much time from now, she's going to be speaking. Her talk is titled The Nutritional Environment and Ethical Case for Regenerative Agriculture. So I'm hoping this interview gives people a little bit of a teaser of what Diana's going to be talking about, and I'm sure much more depth in that talk. So thank you for joining us, Diana. I'm so happy to have you, and don't know, I never have trouble with my internet at my office. Today is just going to be weird. Anyway, I'm personally really psyched because I feel like the work you're doing is the missing piece that connects the nutrition wisdom that we're promoting on an individual level, and connecting that with sort of laying out a strong scientific argument and a feasible path to turn that sort of individual mandate into a viable food system and ecosystem.
Right.
And also, Diana's just an all-around stand-up gal. So anyway, welcome. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Well, I'm psyched that you're the one interviewing me. I specifically asked for you to interview me because we met on a farm up in Vermont, and I like what you're up to, and I'm really excited to come and ask away or let me know where I can start.
Okay. All right. So I think maybe just as a little bit of an introduction to you. and some of the, or maybe before we get into some of the big, what I really want to just jump into is all the stuff you're working on, but because, you know, some of the people that are watching this might not know as much about you. So let's just take our time in this. And I would love for you to talk a little bit about, you're in this unique situation that you were an NTP who went back to school to become a registered dietitian.
I did.
I want to hear you talk a little bit about how that was challenging for you, and also how it was sort of rewarding for you, and the work that you feel, sort of how you're able to shake things up a little bit now in the field.
Yeah. Well, I can talk a little bit about my journey quickly into becoming an NTP. That was the first program I went to in my nutrition education. I was, at age 26, I got a diagnosis of celiac disease, which explained why I was sick my whole life and didn't know what was going on, and nobody knew why I was so sick all the time. I had a job in the natural foods industry doing marketing. I worked for Whole Foods Market. And then when I had our second child, I just couldn't balance working at Whole Foods. And then my husband is a farmer, and so he had a crazy schedule, and I did a lot of evenings and weekends. And the amount of childcare I needed in order to pull all that off was just crazy. And so I started working at the farm. And so we were running a different farm at the time called Green Meadows Farm up on the North Shore of Boston. And it had a very big CSA. So I ran all the front of the house, everything at that farm. I ran this, the CSA, all the memberships. So it was a 500 member CSA. We also had a really big store. We did a big grocery co-op. We had a kitchen. We made prepared foods. We did weddings. All kinds of tour groups and everything. And then we also happened to be hosting a raw milk co-op, and I would see all these Weston A. Pricers coming in for their milk and their butter and everything. And I was like, what is this? What is this? Crazy raw milk people that are so like religious about this raw milk, right? And then I slowly learned more about it. Actually ended up, one of my pregnancies, I had gestational diabetes. Actually, after I learned a little bit more about why fat is good, I went and saw Sally Fallon speak like 20 times before I would actually eat butter. Because I thought I was, you know, doing it right. And I didn't understand why, even though I was gluten-free, I was still not feeling great. I was, you know, tunnel vision if I had to even go 10 minutes past noon, you know, missing lunch, and really increasing my fat helped a lot with that. So I decided to go to a Weston A. Price conference in 2008 in San Francisco. And I went up to Sally and I was like, how can I change my career and become a nutritionist and promote what you're doing? Like, I'm sold, completely sold. Mm-hmm. And she's like, become an RD. And I was like, that is just off the table. Like, no way. That is too much work. And I was an art major undergrad, so I am not gonna do biochem. Like, no, no, no. And then I ended up calling the Weston A. Price office about a year later, and was like, please tell me how else I can become a nutritionist, because I don't want to do an RD, and there's all these other programs out there. There's IIN, you know, what do I do? And they told me that they heard good things about NTA. So that was in 2009. Mm-hmm. And so I did the program. I graduated in 2010. And as I don't know if they still do this because I haven't seen the curriculum lately, but I had to do a book report towards the end. You're an instructor. Do they still make people like pick a book and follow a diet plan and like write about their experience on it? I don't know if that's
not exactly.
Okay. So we could pick like any kind of book. There might've been parameters, but there was this new book called The Paleo Solution that had just come out. Yeah. And I was like, this is crazy. This is like no grains. This is insane. And I don't know if you guys even talk about paleo in the program now, but it definitely was not part of the curriculum. This was craziness to me at the time. Yeah. And so I did it. And I actually, the way Rob had laid it out in in the Paleo Solution book. He's since changed his philosophy a little bit. So the only real like starchy carbs were sweet potatoes, which I don't like. So I was just like, I guess I'm just not gonna eat any carbs. And then the diet was also kind of low fat. And I knew from all my experience with Weston A. Price that fat worked for my body. And so I basically did a high fat version of his paleo diet and no carb. It was basically keto, what I did unknowingly. And I mean, my life went from like black and white to color. It just totally worked. And I really, pretty sure I was in metabolic syndrome before I did it. And it just worked. And then when I opened my NTP practice, it also, you know, some version of the paleo type diet worked on every person that was coming in. And that's when I decided to do the RD because I wanted to be able to take insurance. I wanted to work a little bit more with doctors, and I wanted to do something really big. And I just wanted to, you know, learn a little bit more, but also get that RD credential just so I could have a little more respect in the medical community. And so it took me a really long time. I did it part-time, and I had to start from square one, which it was basically a whole nother bachelor's degree. So I did, you know, Bio 101, Anatomy and Physiology, Chem, all those classes. Biochem was definitely the hardest one as far as like memorization. But then there was, you know, once I got into the actual RD program, it got really hard for me philosophically because they just don't get it. It's just so bad. And, you know, I just kept telling myself, like, keep my eye on the prize. I just need this credential. But it was, you know, it was really expensive. It was really a lot of my time. It was a lot of memorizing things that I don't ever want to have to memorize again, like how many scoops I need of a number 3 scoop to get out of a number 13 can for food service.
Oh, wow.
It was just crazy stuff. So did that. Then you have to do an internship after your coursework. And I actually got rejected. And I'm pretty sure it was because of the website that I had and, you know, all my writings about how fat is good and everything. And I was so crushed. Because I had gotten an A in every class, knowing that it's really competitive to get an internship. So I knew I had to get an A. And also I had food service experience. I had worked at Whole Foods. I had written cookbooks, but of course they weren't in line with, you know, the classic philosophies of RDs. Anyway, so I figured out, I found one program that would accept me. It was like this correspondence program that you can only get into if you've already been rejected or if you have a PhD.
Yeah.
Like, so weird. And so I was able to do my internship through them, and I had to work in hospitals, which was really eye-opening. I had to, you know, prescribe tube feeds and pick nutrition. You know, and I think it's really good that those solutions are there for people who need them, you know, who can't take food orally, and it's great, but it's just not where I wanted to be, of course. I want to be in preventative nutrition and real food nutrition. And so the internship was the hardest, like really, really hard for me. And I'm not good at doing things I don't want to do. So but you know, and then I took the exam, and I remember being so mad after I took that exam at how bad the questions were that I like ripped everything up. Like I had all these study guides that I was planning on giving to other RDs to help them. Yeah. And I just ripped it up and like burned it all. And I was like, I never want to even think about anything to do with this RD program ever again.
Yeah.
I hope the American Academy of Nutrition and Dietetics is not listening to me. But I'm really happy on the other side. So I'm really, really glad that I put in all that energy and got the RD, because I can take medical insurance, and that's really great for a lot of people that can't pay. I can give NTA philosophies out in my private practice as a dietitian. So if I worked in a hospital, I wouldn't be able to do that, but I have a private practice. I can say what I want as long as I have evidence to support my case. And there's great evidence to support eating saturated fat and, lowering carbohydrates and, maybe not eating as much processed food. There's really great evidence for that. So I've been able to also practice medical nutrition therapy. So when people come to me with IBS or Crohn's or celiac, I can actually prescribe a diet for them. And it's really helped me, I think, with my public speaking because, having that RE credential does get you a little more notice at a lot of conferences.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. It seems, which this actually kind of brings me to my next line of questioning, and is related, is that I think you have been able to sort of shake things up a little and bring some of the messaging that is part of your film project that you're working on. Some of that information it seems like every time I turn my head, you're at another soil conference, or you're all over the place speaking at conferences, basically bringing what we preach at the NTA to these diverse communities that would actually not be hearing them otherwise.
Right. Yeah. I've been able to go to Iceland, New Zealand. I have, I go to a lot of soil type conferences. I'm going to be at Regeneration Canada in Montreal. I'm just so excited to be participating in those conferences. But then I also do a lot with the paleo community. I'm going to be at Low Carb Denver. So I think that, it's really nice to be able to go to these nutrition communities and, tell them that they need to pay more attention to sustainability. Paleo has really come a long way in that world. And I've been part of that movement ever since it started. I was at the very first Ancestral Health Symposium, the very first PaleoFX, and PaleoFX this year is, I'm going to be on the keynote stage, and their charity dinner is for a film project. So that's
amazing.
Huge. Yeah. Charity cocktail party, I guess. And I was a keynote at the Grass-Fed Exchange too, which is a great conference. I'll be there this year too in Santa Rosa. And I love to travel, and I get really bored really easily. So it's really nice to be able to not just sit in an office every single day and over again, tell people, eat more fat, get high quality proteins, don't eat processed food. It's like, you got to mix it up a little bit. So
yeah.
So I'm really happy with where everything is right now. It's definitely can feel really overwhelming. I just looked at my calendar for starting next week. It's totally insane. But luckily my kids are 13 and 15 now, so they can figure things out and do their own laundry and get themselves fed and all that kind of stuff. So it worked out good.
Dependent.
Yeah.
Okay. So the film project you're working on. Serious, enviable ambition you have. I was just thinking, do you pinch yourself sometimes just thinking, how did I end up here?
Well,
and
it sounds way more awesome than it probably, on a day-to-day basis. Producing a film is really hard. And it's a lot. So producers, which is my job on the film, it's my project. I do everything from accounting, which bookkeeping is the worst possible project for my, the way my brain works, to, making sure I know where a Walmart is in case we need emergency cheap sneakers because our camera guy stepped in a cow pie, I need to know, I'm booking all the cars, the Airbnbs, the flights, so and doing all the fundraising. So it's been a huge learning curve for me, but I'm also really happy with where things are and all the support we've gotten. And so we did a crowdfunder last year at this time, and we raised enough money to get started. We have been filming a lot. We were filming in Switzerland. We've filmed all over the US. We've spent a lot of time also in a small town in Indiana with a clinic there that's really doing incredible work in the middle of corn country, USA, with people that don't have the kind of money to be buying exclusively grass-fed beef and organic produce from their farmers market and all that kind of stuff. So I think that's important to show that, you know, it's good. You can eat real food without being rich, you know?
Yeah, that's crucial.
Yeah, so we've gotten started, and I'm just spreading the word. I'm also pretty much almost done with a book that we're gonna have as the companion book to the film. And we've got a book contract with a really interesting publisher, and you guys will learn more about it later, but he would be the last publisher you would think that would be interested in this book, which is the most exciting thing for me. And Rob Wolf is the co-author, which is also really great because we think there'll be just a lot more eyeballs on the book with him on board. And he has a really humorous writing style that, you know, I tend to be really straightforward and just like kind of no nonsense. And he's doesn't write that way. Huh?
I said he's spicing it up a little.
He's totally going in and spicing it up. Yeah. So I've done all the research and kind of laid things out, and he's like adding his like wacky sayings and stuff in there. So it's been fun to see how he alters things a little bit, but I think it'll be a lot more readable to the general public. And I think, you know, the film is so important because people they're not reading big, heavy books on sustainability these days. They're digesting their information via media. And we initially thought we were going to do a feature film, but the more we started filming and saw how complex these stories are to tell on film, we realized that a docuseries is really the way to go. So now we're looking at a multi-piece docuseries project, each episode addressing a different aspect about eating meat, so nutritionally, environmentally, ethics, things like that.
Well, that's brilliant.
Yeah.
I'm really glad that I'm sure that I think when you started these projects and you are sort of attached to an idea, then like realizing that maybe it's going to be a better baby if you let it morph into the thing that it seems like it wants to morph into, but it can be hard to let go of that original thing. So good for you that you were able to step back and say, this is going to be better for it.
I think it'll be easier for young people to wrap their heads around things too, if they're just getting a 20-minute dose. Mm-hmm. And then they can kind of go away and then come back the next night for the next dose, you know?
Yeah, totally. And I can't think of, excuse me, a better person within our community to tackle, I think, something of this scope and size. And I was mentioning to you earlier today that I feel like it's coming at this perfect time where there's been an uptick just in conversations, at least in the US, around climate change, which I think might increasingly begin to encompass the impact of agricultural livestock. Mm-hmm. I was listening to the news this morning and just found myself, and they were talking about this Green New Deal or Green Deal, whatever it's called. And I just found myself feeling really thankful that your voice and your brains are out there and are increasingly, as you know, you're sort of actually releasing this work out into the world, are contributing to the conversation. And just knowing that because you're behind this project, that it's going to be driven by passion, but guided by science and ancestral wisdom. So I would love, because I know that everybody that's watching probably shares my excitement about your film. Anything you want to tell us about it, anything you can tell us about it, like where are you I mean, where you are in the process, when you think it's going to be released, this, docuseries, but then also who have you gotten to be involved in it and that kind of thing?
Well, just backing up about the timing real quick, they've already gotten nutrition wrong, right? We already know that the dietary guidelines are horrifically wrong. And now with this new Eat Lancet announcement that, in order for better health and better planetary health, we can only eat half an ounce of red meat per day. But yet we can eat tons and tons of ultra processed seed oils and 8 teaspoons of sugar, but only a quarter of an egg a day. They're getting sustainability and nutrition wrong. So there's no respect put in there at all for how cattle are actually one of our best tools at reversing climate change through their grazing. And not a lot of nutrition people know that. And so I think it's really important for the nutrition community to better educate themselves on the benefits, because I'm sure a lot of people that have graduated from the NTA program, or who go to NTPs or NTCs, can wrap their heads around why it's okay to eat meat, as far as nutrition goes. But that environmental argument is pretty strong and makes for great sound bites, and it's incredibly misguided. Yeah. And I don't think many people are able to articulate why those water numbers are inflated, why cattle emitting methane is actually a natural process that, most of the food that a cow would eat is inedible by humans and would just decompose and emit greenhouse gases anyway if we didn't run it through a ruminant and actually make meat out of it.
Yeah, and the fact that we've had ruminants on this planet for as long as we've had animals of that size on this planet. And
exactly. And it's like, if you can wrap your head around ancestral nutrition, then the transition over to understanding how cattle are a natural part of ecosystem health it takes 2 seconds to really get it. But then to be able to articulate that back and really have those talking points is something that I really want to help people with, because, as health practitioners, we need to be able to make people feel okay about eating the food that we're prescribing to them. And people are really not feeling good about eating red meat, but yet they'll eat CAFO chicken, they'll eat farm fish. People don't bat an eye at fake meats and things like that, or even non-organic vegetables, because they're plants, and plants are cleaner than eating meat, and that's just not true. So I just wanted to kind of talk about, a meat tax is a very, very real thing that totally could happen, and nobody's pushing back. Nobody in the real food community, no one in the sustainability community is like, guys, this is not gonna work.
That blows my mind. I actually, for anyone who hasn't listened to Diana's podcast, you've got a lot of great interviews on there with, I love actually that you snag people that are not just making the circuit. I can tell you are spending time in this field looking for really solid information, and you're reaching out to sort of non-traditional guests that I just always appreciate those podcasts. But she's got some interviews on there that will blow your mind in all different aspects of this conversation. But I would also, I'm sure if you're coming to the conference, she's gonna go into some of these things in more detail.
Yeah.
And also what she's saying about educating yourself as an NTP or NTC on these topics, between her talk at the conference and any conference probably that she speaks at in the foreseeable future. This is what she's going to be talking about. And we have this whole soil, it's like sort of soil to table, soil health farm track. I can't remember what it's called, but anything in that track will be a great education on these topics. But okay, so to kind of lead you into the next arena, which is get like digging into some of the stuff. Like I want to do a little myth busting.
Okay.
So there's a lot of misinformation surrounding the role that animal foods play in the human diet. There's misinformation around the ability of various food systems to feed populations of world populations. And I loved, you had this, I can't remember the name of the guest on this show. He had a Southern accent, but he kind of described like commodity versus regenerative, even livestock in that way. I mean, I don't think of livestock as, I mean, yes, it's a commodity, but I don't know. I just love the way that he described.
That was probably Will Harris.
Yeah, that's who it was.
He sounds a little bit like Foghorn Leghorn. He's amazing. And I hope that I actually met him at a conference, and maybe NTA can have him sometime because he's so great.
I would totally pitch that.
Yeah.
He was so good. But anyway, and then I think further, there's a lot of misinformation that you were kind of alluding to about the impact that these different, like a commodity versus a regenerative system has on the environment. So I'd love to hear you kind of speak to each of those. There's like maybe we won't get into the, I don't know. I sort of feel like how when it comes to like this sort of spiritual side of this or whatever, for some people it's just there's ethics, and that's its own whole discussion. But I would love to maybe gear more towards, anything we want to talk about the meat itself as a component of the diet and its importance biologically, but then feeding populations and the impact on the environment.
Sure. And I should back up where what I just mentioned, Will Harris, and who he sounds like. I mean that in the most loving way. I wish Will was my dad. He's just, I adore him so much. And I only refer to his accent in the most loving way and in no way mocking. And he's actually really articulate on the ethical case for meat. The podcast I did with him was really good. It was about, a year and a half or 2 years ago, that one. But he's really great. And I did one more recently with someone named Alan Williams, who also has a Southern accent. So it could have been him that you might have been thinking about as well.
That is who I'm thinking.
Okay. So he lives in Mississippi, and he is a soil consulting expert. He used to be a professor. And in his county in Mississippi, there used to be 500 small scale dairy farms, and today there are 0. And there used to be, thriving small towns, and today they're all boarded up and, vacant, and the poverty has gone way up. And so that's a really important aspect when we're thinking about, why buy from small scale farms instead of big ag. We have lost rural America, and there's such a divide politically, but also just culturally between our rural society and our more urban society. And there's not a lot of respect for those of us who are producing food, and there needs to be more. There needs to be more. And Alan actually goes through the numbers and has totally, looked at how much pasture we have, how much grain production is dedicated to ethanol and a feedlot. Yeah. And we can totally 100% and then some have enough land to finish all of our current beef cattle production on grass. That was a really great podcast.
That was a great podcast. And that you mentioned was the thing that I feel like one of the biggest things that I took away from that, which was the sheer amount of agricultural land that's actually used for crops versus grazing. And then, and I don't remember any of the numbers, but that when you look at the crops, how much of that is not even going to, or like crops that are not being used for food.
Right.
Like you were saying, ethanol.
Yeah, so most, even typical cattle, so people get really bent out of shape when I go down this path, but I'm going to have a little nuance here and hope people come along with me. So I'm going to preface this with, I 100% think that people should be supporting regenerative agriculture and buying grass-fed beef.
Mm-hmm.
Number one, that's great. I think nutrient density wise, seafood is probably a little bit better. Then you got the organ meats, and then you've got grass-fed beef, way above chicken and pork, even pastured chicken and pork. So beef is just, it wins over chicken and pork. But when we look at even feedlot cattle, I think there's a lot of misinformation out there and misperceptions about the difference between feedlot cattle and grass-finished cattle. And I actually think that people who don't have access to grass-fed beef should still be eating feedlot cattle. And the reason for this is 90% of the diet of feedlot cattle is actually inedible to humans. Most of what they're getting is actually just byproducts of like the soybean industry or the corn syrup industry or the brewing industry. So they're getting a lot of distillers grains, things like that. And all cattle start out on grass, and it's just whether or not they're finished in a feedlot or finished on grass. And I think a lot of people don't know that. So cows aren't just born on a feedlot, live on a feedlot, and die on a feedlot. That's not how it works. With typical chicken and pork, those CAFO systems, it is 100% their whole life is in a building in a CAFO situation.
Wow.
So if we're looking at, ethics, nutrition, and environmental impact, feedlot finished beef is still better than CAFO chicken or pork. Mm-hmm. It's more nutritious, it's more ethical, and it's better for the environment. Let's see, nutritionally, there's not a huge difference to humans between feedlot finished beef and grass finished beef. There are more omega-3s in grass finished beef, but grass finished beef is not an amazing source of omega-3s to begin with. Mm-hmm. So if you were to, picture a pie chart, and we're looking at the percentage of fatty acids from beef, it's like this much. The pen would be the omega 3s and 6s in beef. And if we look at grass finished beef, it's double, but it's still not. That makes sense. It's like 2 pennies is double 1 penny. It's double your money, but it's still not. You would still need to eat. I did the math on this, and I think it was 8 pounds of grass-fed beef in order to get the same amount of omega-3s you could get in a 3-ounce serving of salmon.
Yeah. And let's just kind of tick off some of the other, because I was kind of thinking about this too, some of the other nutrients that are actually in higher amounts, like in red meat, that red meat is an important source of.
Yeah, so iron and B12 are the most common nutrient deficiencies worldwide, according to the CDC, and red meat is much higher in that than poultry or pork, especially in iron. That's why it's red. And iron's really hard to get, and it's actually even really hard to get just in muscle tissue, which is why we want to be eating organ meats like liver as well, or taking desiccated liver pills, something like that. So those are the biggest ones. There's also zinc, and there is more CLA in grass-fed beef than in typical beef, and that is significant, and that's a really good reason to eat grass-finished beef. I don't want people to think, well, I don't have any grass-fed beef, and so I'm just going to go eat beans and rice, or there's still really important things in animal products that we can't get from plant-based products that make it worth it to consume them.
Yeah, I think that's an important, I think it's an important point to remember, kind of like hearkening back to your discussion around in the clinic in Indiana, that, we have to be, I actually earlier today was just writing on some module content that is about barriers that our clients face, and to the nutritional therapy process. And one huge one that we cannot stick our head in the sand about is money. And we've got to be creative in this process, and we have to realize that just because you can't do something 100% doesn't mean don't do it at all.
Right.
That better than solutions are still a lot better than.
Right. And when it comes to like pasture-based versus typical, we do see the nutrition benefits of, for example, the pasture-raised eggs are way, way, way better than typical eggs.
Yeah.
So it tends to really be in the more high-fat products that we see the benefits. So grass-fed cream, grass-fed milk, those are all significantly better for you than typical. So if I was, kind of strapped financially and trying to make better decisions, I would definitely go for pasture-raised eggs and grass-fed milk.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's a really good tip. I did not know that. So if you're strapped, the red meat maybe bumps down the list, and the dairy and eggs come up the list as far as the quality.
But again, people get so bent out of shape, or maybe someone's just coming on. So, I mean, I live on a farm where we do pasture-raised animals. We have goats and sheep here, and we do pasture-raised eggs, and we raise organic vegetables. And I do think that is the highest quality for human health and for the environment. But I also don't think that everyone's going to go tomorrow switch all their meat consumption to grass finished. It's not going to happen. And so I think that there's you have to meet people where they are.
Yeah. Yeah. I want you to talk, because this was another, as I've just been learning more about this stuff, it was another just huge kind of like a thing, this like trope, like this thing that is repeated. And I don't know that anyone really knows what they're saying, why, if it's true, what, I don't know. There's just like, it's like a game of telephone. Facts are sometimes. So when it gets to the end, you're like, oh
my God, I'm dying to know what this is now. You didn't prep me.
It's the greenhouse gas topic.
Yep.
Like the sort of role that methane, this was another podcast.
Yes.
So there are like these 3 different greenhouse gases, and everybody is just like, methane, it's so terrible, and the cows' emissions and blah, blah, blah. I want you to talk about that. So.
Yeah. Okay. So, I don't think I'm going to do as good a job as the expert I had on my podcast. I had this guy, Frank Mitholner. He is the greenhouse gas animal specialist at UC Davis, who's the guru on this. And literally his Twitter handle is GHG Guru.
Yeah.
And he's really great. But basically, if I can try to distill this down for those of us who aren't, PhD candidates under him, first of all, cows don't fart, they're belching. They fart a little bit, but it's mostly coming out of their mouths. So that's something that a lot of people don't know. Secondly, it's a natural process that happens in all ruminant animals. And we used to have way more ruminant animals living in North America before we got rid of the bison and all the other native species that were here, and just wiped everything out and moved in with our urban sprawl and our cornfields. So the number of beef cattle today is not more than, we don't have more animals emitting methane today than we ever have in the past. And they're not contributing significantly to global warming at all. The biggest contributor to global warming by far is consumerism and fossil fuels.
Yeah.
And so the best things you can do, one is have one less baby consumer. So, and I'm not passing judgment there. I've had people say, well, the religion, and so that's fine. If you're not going to do that, that's cool. That's just what the research shows. And the second most important thing you can do is not take these extravagant flights, and just not burn as much fossil fuels, not be somebody that is over consuming products. And so it's really those of us in the West that are the problem, because of all the fossil fuels. And that is introducing new greenhouse gases to the atmosphere, whereas cattle are just recycling carbon and methane. And so as part of their digestive process, they have rumen they in their 4-chamber stomachs. And the bacteria in there are actually what is digesting the grass and turning that into mostly fatty acids in order for the cow to thrive. And so they are belching out methane, but it's not like new methane. It's not like it wasn't, all these things are just part of cycles, right?
Right.
And when they're managed properly on pasture, so like a holistic type management where they're moved frequently, they're not overgrazing. And Alan Savory's TED Talk is really great for people to wrap their head around that. But we'll also be talking about this type of philosophy in my book and in the film. So you mob graze them, as Joel Salatin would say. You take large herds and you move them frequently across your pasture, just like they would in the savannas in Africa, because of predator pressure. We can mimic that with electric fencing and move them so that the grass has a chance to rest after it's been intensively grazed. And in that resting process is when the magic happens, is when carbon can actually be sequestered. Grasslands are our biggest opportunity for carbon sequestration, and we can actually grow food while sequestering carbon. And so all this complaint about methane emissions are not taking in the holistic view of the whole carbon cycle. And those studies that are saying, oh, well, cattle are the biggest percentage of greenhouse gas, or 18% of greenhouse gas emissions, and more than transportation. That one study from Livestock's Long Shadow has been just haunting all of us in the sustainability world. What they did in that study is they took the full life cycle of cattle, so all the things involved in raising an animal, from the production of the feed, the transport of the animal, the belching emissions, everything, right? But then when they looked at the transportation industry, they only looked at tailpipe emissions. So not even like the transportation involved in building a plane, getting all those materials to Boeing headquarters, none of that stuff was calculated. So they did a full life cycle assessment on cattle, just emissions on transportation.
Wow. Apples, oranges. Is that the study that the authors ultimately were like, actually
they retracted their numbers? Yeah, they did go down. So the worldwide percentage, according to their calculations, we still don't have a full life cycle assessment on transportation, so it's still not totally fair. But they did lower the number from 18 to 14% for a worldwide emissions. Again, not looking at a life cycle, like the fact that the carbon can actually be sequestered in the ground. Mm-hmm. But you have to realize too, if we're looking at countries that maybe don't have as much transportation as the US, the percentage, if they have more livestock and less, the less developed country, right? So more livestock, less cars per person, then the percentage is going to go up. From the livestock, because that's just how math works. But it's not that the solution is to eliminate a nutrient dense food that's many people in developing countries rely on for their livelihood. I just did a post on my Instagram page and wrote about this in my critique of the Eat Land Set paper, what we're not realizing in America and Europe is that in most people who live in poverty are depending on livestock as their walking larder, right? That's their food, that's their wealth, is their livestock. If you don't own land and you can't afford to buy seeds, and you don't know if you're going to get kicked off the rented land, then cropping doesn't make a lot of sense. Where are you going to get the water to irrigate? You know, having an animal that kind of takes care of itself, they kind of multiply on their own, they need some water, but you know, you can milk them once in a while. Like, that's a really good investment, and that's also happens to be the most nutrient dense thing they can be consuming.
Yeah. Yeah, it was interesting. I had a student in one of my classes who did it was some sort of, she is a nurse, and it was like providing medical care in sort of a rural community in Mexico. And she said that she went in thinking she was going to give all this amazing nutritional therapy advice, and was jolted kind of into the reality of just worldwide living situations not looking like her, you know, cushy one in, you know, the Midwest or wherever.
Yeah.
That there was a family who they were really struggling with hunger, and they had a goat, and she was like, "What? Can you drink some of the goat milk?" Because they weren't, and she was like, we can't. We milk the goats, and we have to sell the goat's milk for money so that we have everything else for the family. And I think that that's what you're saying about just being a part of the sort of economy and way of life of a lot of people is something that it's hard to appreciate when you're living.
We host interns on our farm. A lot of them come from Peru, from the Andes, from this kind of remote place. And guinea pig is their thing. They love it. And if you think about a population that doesn't have refrigeration, having a big cow is not very useful as far as meat goes, but guinea pigs are like a one meal deal, you know? They don't have a grocery store. There are no grocery stores near them. So I think sustainability can look like a lot of different things, depending on the context of the area. Maybe cattle aren't ideal. Maybe it needs to be, you know, another ruminant animal or another traditional food. And I think we need to be open-minded to that stuff.
Yeah. One last thing, and then I want to see if we've got any questions.
Sure.
This was just another greenhouse gas, just little, like mind-blowing truth bomb in that interview that I listened to on your podcast was about the sort of the longevity of the different greenhouse gases in the...
Oh, right. Yeah, I was going to bring that up. Yeah. So CO2, gosh, I'm trying to remember the number. I think he said it was about 100 years.
Something like that.
I think it's about 100 years. And I'm just blanking because it's the end of the day now and I'm just fried. It's Friday. But methane is about 12 years.
Yeah.
So after 12 years, methane's gone.
That's this whole part of the conversation that it's like another apples to oranges kind of thing, because when we're talking about cars versus cows.
Yeah.
Like what it's kind of like saying, well, you know, I poured like 2 cups of liquid in this bucket, and somebody else is like, well, I also poured 2 cups of liquid in the bucket, but if theirs was like a poisonous liquid and yours was milk, then there's not a comparison there. There's like different effects.
But liquids are bad.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I think that's something, I don't know. I think that we, as in the nutritional therapy or just nutrition community at large, do need to, I think it's coming to a point where it's our responsibility to educate ourselves on some of this stuff, because we will not be able to actually live the lives we want to live, eat the food we want to eat, you know, but we can't have what we want to have if we don't sort of protect its longevity in the world, like these systems, the longevity of these systems.
Yeah, I mean, that's one of the interesting things that I've realized working on this film and fundraising. The plant-based community is really organized and really well-funded. And those of us in the real food community are like, great, if they don't eat meat, then more for me. And that's actually really dangerous thinking. Again, a meat tax is a very real thing that could happen. We don't have enough time to be letting people just kind of move forward with, eat whatever it makes me so mad. So according to the United Nations, we have like 60 harvests left. That's it. And we've completely destroyed our soil. And it's a little easy to forget about that kind of stuff because we live in the US, where we're going to actually feel the ramifications of it last. But a lot of what's going on with this turmoil in other countries, with Syria, with Iraq, with a lot of places in Africa, a lot of that is driven by climate change and by hungry people, and it's only going to get worse. Yeah. And climate change is also going to be making it so that people just can't grow the food they used to be able to grow. The ice caps on mountains are drying up, melting, and rivers are going to stop running, and then people aren't going to have irrigation for their crops, and they're going to need to move. Yeah. And political instability is, only exacerbated by that kind of environment. Terrorism and extremism is only aggravated by, this is the kind of environment that allows extremism to propagate. So this is a very big deal to people. And I think that, once you've kind of fixed your own health, it's our responsibility to now move forward and it's great that to go out and help other people with their diet, but it's also really important to pay attention to the groups that are trying to eliminate all animals from our food system. It's a huge threat to the well-being of our health and of the planet.
That was amazing. And definitely pay attention. If you're not coming to the conference, pay attention to what Diana is doing, because she talks. I mean, we spent a lot of time, I feel like today, talking kind of about the problems and maybe a little bit what's wrong in our analysis of what the problems are. But Diana also spends a lot of time talking about the solutions and how the solutions involve these systems that require animals, to regenerate the soil and to sequester carbon and that kind of thing. I want to just give a few minutes here. If anyone has any questions, just type them into the chat.
Yeah, and I didn't answer your question about where we are with the film, so I'm happy to do that.
You say that, and if anybody has any questions, type them in there while Diana talks about this.
Do we have any? I don't know how to.
I'll tell you if we do.
Okay.
But you talk about the film while
okay. I mean, I can't give too much away, but we have interviewed Dr. Mark Hyman, who's a huge supporter of all this stuff. And I actually really love his book, Food, What the Heck Should I Eat? I think it's a really good, that's his, I think it's his most latest book. I had it right behind me. Just really good. And he's a very big picture thinker as far as like what's wrong with our food system and everything. As I mentioned, Rob is the co-executive producer. We're working with Chris Kresser very closely with the film. He's our main nutrition expert. Dr. Zoe Harcum from England is just an amazing researcher and really good at ripping apart papers. And so we're hoping to get her. I'm trying to line up right as we speak, a camera crew to interview her at the Low Carb Denver conference. And let me think of who else. Nicolette Hound-Nyman is wonderful. I don't know if you've ever heard her speak, but she wrote a book called Defending Beef. And
I know exactly.
she's really, really great. Defending Beef is amazing. And she's a vegetarian living on a cattle ranch and an environmental lawyer. And I love that she's a woman rancher vegetarian. Like, yeah. Awesome. Yeah. Leah Keith is a huge supporter of the project. She wrote a book called The Vegetarian Myth, which I always recommend to people. And she's really great on the ethics, and she was a vegan and has an amazing transformation story of how she dealt with kind of leaving the vegan movement and recovering part of her health. Was still kind of largely destroyed by that diet, but she was really sold politically and ethically on that. Mm-hmm. And environmental experts, we've got also, I'm hoping to film with Joel Salatin, Jason Roundtree, who is a researcher at Michigan State. He came out with a great study showing carbon can be sequestered by ruminants. I'm trying to think if there's anyone else I can talk about. We have Dr. Sarah Hallberg, who has an amazing study showing reversal of type 2 diabetes with a ketogenic diet. So, yeah.
And there was another, I guess one of the people, I think he was a French.
I really want him on.
Yeah, I heard.
That's my most exciting podcast that I've done, and his work is the most thrilling to me as far as meat work.
Yeah.
So Frédéric Leroy is a professor in Brussels, and he's actually a meat microbiologist, but is so good at succinctly explaining why meat is such a polarizing topic and how it has gone from a food of necessity and our relationship as sort of reciprocity with meat to the most either, healthy or poisonous food possible in modern culture. And his opinion is that meat is unfairly absorbing all of our stressors about health and the environment, because it's such a powerful food. It's our most powerful food there is. It represents so many things. It represents power. It represents wealth, but it also can represent disgust and death. And so he really thinks about these things on a level that the blips kind of come through my head, but he has the whole paper and has really written about it. And I'm hoping we can dive into his work in the film as well. So it all depends on how much money we raise. And so that's where I could use the NTA community to help me make this happen.
Yeah. And actually thank you for that segue. Is there a way that if people want to contribute to the project, do you have any kind of Kickstarter ongoing? I know you had one at the beginning, but do you have something?
Yeah, I did this big, huge. Yeah. I can't be a fulfillment house anymore. So I was offering tons of perks, and I just can't maintain that anymore because I am just tapped out. But donations are tax deductible. It's a 501c3, and it's sustainabledish.com/film. And then I'm, on the side, it's actually my full-time job at the moment, working with various foundations, investors, and corporate sponsors that are, interested in better meat, or consumers that are interested in better meat. And so we're really trying to wrap up the fundraising so I can get out there and actually finish making this project.
It was so great having you on today. I want again, to just give a plug for if you're coming to join us for the annual conference, March 1st through 3rd in Portland, come see Diana speak. She's going to be awesome. She's a great speaker and is going to be talking about fascinating stuff, more of this. And I would love for you to just share where people can, all the different venues that people can get a hold of you via social media or follow you via social media.
Yeah.
A bunch of them all good.
Will I see you at NTA? Are you going to be there?
Yeah.
Oh, good. Let's catch up. So I'm most active on Instagram these days. So it's Sustainable Dish on Instagram. I'm on Twitter. I don't interact that much on Twitter, but it's Sustainable Dish. And I'm on Facebook at Sustainable Dish. And I also have a newsletter where I post articles or things that I'm reading or whatever. So people can find that through my website, which is sustainabledish.com. And they can also learn, I have a lot of blog posts that I've written about these topics that have citations. So if people want to, I think the most recent one that I wrote about the Eat Land set is actually a really nice primer on why we need red meat in our diet, both nutritionally and environmentally. But I've also written about ethics as well. So that's on there too. Yeah, I have a book, and hopefully the book and the film will be out sometime spring, summer of 2020.
Oh, that's exciting.
Yeah.
All right. So we'll do some exciting fundraising and speaking at things this year. And then 2020, we'll look forward to more of you in different media formats.
Yeah.
But again, I just also want to say for the 1000th time, listen to her podcast because it's really good in
Thank you.
a unique way in the nutrition world, I think. The way that she blends topics and has awesome guests.
Well, I try really hard. I know that there's a lot of bloggers out there, to my dismay, that will only work or speak to bloggers of equal or higher, likes. And I run away from that mentality really hard, because I think that there's a lot of really smart people out there like myself that don't have maybe a gajillion likes on their Facebook or Instagram, but have a really important thing to say. And so I love introducing people to voices that maybe they haven't heard before.
Yeah, I think sometimes some of the people who are doing the most work and the best work are actually too busy to go after likes sometimes in some cases. So
yeah.
Anyway, thank you again. It's been lovely to chat, and I can't wait to see you at the conference.
Yeah, see you soon.
All right. Bye, everybody out there.
Bye.